Happy Holy Day, Moors, and welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community, dedicating to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, we are pleased to present our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, as he presents the Exchequer's Demo-Lordship, Maintaining Hell at Midgard Earth. Let's receive him.
Grand evening to you all. As we were talking earlier this week, about the problems that, humanity is still suffering with the de facto operations, the biological warfare continued to be executed against humanity. One of the things we talked about, people's levels of consciousness, and I was mentioning that it is important for them to be cognate and to become, in their minds and hearts, rejective of the heptarchy, because most of the people think that you need absolute, perfect, and specific curative measures altogether to bring remedy to the problems that we're having today. And my position has always been that it's more important, even though that is very important, and we seek that as a goal to get people cognate on a large scale. It's important that the people be spiritually, and with that I mean by the breath of sincerity, connected to rejecting the institutions that were set up by the heptarchy, that they have not been aware of. And this includes the dogmatic systems that have been used by creating connotative linguistics, which we've been telling the people about, for years. And most of you who have been studying know that connotative linguistics is used to control the people in general. And so we're going to talk about some of the geopolitics today in the nature of social engineering, because it's necessary. And I want to set the stage for our conversation, because we want to be open in the conversation. Because I know that as the hybrids are continuing this war against humanity, that a lot of the people still haven't figured out that these people who have been governing them are the enemies of humanity. They still think that these people are, just lightly corrupt relative to parties, political parties, political ideologies, etc., and still haven't accepted the reality that, in fact, the demon breed of hybrids have actually been operating in government actually for the last 1,000 years, to be honest with you. And then you are aware that many of the people are not aware that there's more than one Earth, and that Earth simply means inhabited place. So Earth means inhabited place. It does not mean this particular inhabited place that we called Earth. This particular Earth is called Midgard. Midgard, write that down and don't forget it. Because as things begin to open up and more is revealed to the people in general, the conversations will change, because your concepts will change, because your information base will change, because much that has been suppressed for the last 1,000 years or so will be opened up. And this is why, and this is how people in some ways will be able to handle better in their comprehension and their ability to adjust and kind of modify themselves under these pressures that are being put on them by knowing what's real and what has been fake. And so very often people hear us say, de facto, de jure, prima facie, simulacrum, etc. And because we know that a lot of people who, come and share with us at the House of Reawakening Minds don't have an extensive library, because we have been trained to, get rid of our books, particularly after the hybrids enforced the unum sanctum operations with the, indexus librorum prohibitorum and indexus librorum expurgatorius, that the people have been told were the great Christian book burnings, not knowing that these are actually the demon hybrids among us who actually been governing, and they have infiltrated every phase of life for the most part. And all of your major institutions that the people have learned to trust and put their time, their service, their efforts into to make life better, they have not known, and it's hard for people to accept that these institutions are contaminated with the hybrid demon breed. And over the years, they've also recognized that every once in a while, when we're talking about the hegemony of the hybrid Europeans, we'd often just say Europeans, and in these last 7 or 8 years, we've been reminding the people we're making reference to the hybrid Europeans, and that's not to say all the hybrid Europeans are actually operating on the demonic level. However, it must be understood that in general, and this is not limited to them, however, in general, those who have been operating on the demonic level have pretty much gripped themselves or rooted themselves within the hybrid dramatic tribes, as opposed to less so to the Asiatic African tribes, etc. And so one of the things that we want to remind the people of is we have to start shedding some of the concepts that we have that we've been taught by the dark priesthood via the dogma platforms that have been presented as religion. And so, and this is a reminder to put you in context with what we're dealing with in these days, so that the people can better handle the attacks that are being made on them, both open and covert. And so we're going to read hell, because we already know, when we talked this earlier, when you were making the poster, Dr. Naila, mm-hmm. and I was saying to you, I didn't want the fire as a background, because the people have been pretty much spooked by that general image when they talk about hell. And the reality is, because of the anthropomorphic instructions that have been promoted upon humanity for the last, hundreds of years, it's kind of difficult for them to recognize that the people who they trusted to redeem them from these negative jinn, din, shaitan, Satan concept, negative beings, dark spirits, etc., not knowing that those were pretty much the houses of these beings. And of course, it's difficult to get people to look at things realistically, because out of fear, miscomprehension, people sometimes are in denial that the platforms and their conditions are a reflection of failure relative to their concepts, as opposed to the successes that we have been promoting among ourselves in the name of religion. And I always say in the name of religion, because the truth of the matter is, and this is not new, that the masses in general have not been really taught the truth about religion. And so religion in many ways gets a bad name because it has been contaminated by the dark priesthood. And it must be understood that the dark priesthood have always taken anything that is positive and turned it negative. As an example, for instance, when they want to deceive someone or to bring someone in under a psychic attack, as an example, or they want to approach them politically and produce some destructive ends, they will always bring or present what you would call a pretty face, and whether it's political, physical, etc., or promise of good and actually do the opposite. Their major operations are based on projection, and that is to present one thing and do the opposite, and at the same time perfect the art of producing that opposition and then again projecting it on someone else, meaning that, as an example, on a more simplistic form or term, say break the window of your neighbor's house and then point to the neighbor down the street, or take or steal something from the neighbor down the street, as an example, some item, then attack someone else and leave the evidence of the item that belongs to another, and then be the mediator between the two while plotting to destroy both sides. And this has been a consistent pattern of the priesthood. And this is, again, why you will see constantly in dogma systems, even while the priesthood had been raping the people at large, they keep them psychologically fighting between gods and devils without explanations about the origins of those gods and devils. They just use those words loosely. And by the people not knowing the history and the development of the dark priesthood of Rome, etc., they don't suspect them. They look to them for guidance. So we want to talk about, number one, how they've always been using the guilt trip of going to hell if you don't go along with the programs that the priesthood present to you. And this is where the connotative linguistic comes in, because they have presented one thing about hell when hell is actually another. So let's everyone take a pen and paper, which you usually do when you come here with us at the House of Reawakening Minds, and write down hell, Hell. And so we're going to go into ancient jurisprudence, and it's still modern jurisprudence, and show you what it really means. On page 857 of Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary, Ancient and Modern Jurisprudence. Hell. Hell is the name formerly given to a place under the Exchequer chamber where the king's debtors were confined. Now, when you go, and for those of you who are scholars, you'll find that also in the Old Rich Dictionary and other older dictionaries of jurisprudence, law, etc. And yet, the priesthood would present hell as a place of fire, under the ground, etc. And while allegorically, in some ways, that had some truth to it, it's not true in the sense that the people have been taught, because it's really dealing with the fact that beneath the chambers of the exchequers, the king's chambers, etc., they housed people or put people in the ground in dungeons when they did not pay tithing to the priesthood and the lords, etc., who were feudal lords and abusing the people. This was a punishment for them, not unlike the private prisons all across North America that they've been telling the people are actually government prisons, when actually they're the private prisons of actually the members of the Circle Church and Chancery, which you've been told were judges and magistrates, and the attorneys and lawyers that you've been thinking were in place to defend the treaty rights and the constitution rights of the people, when actually they are and have been and are members of the Roman Curia and operatives of hell. And what they do is operate from this perspective. The persons who are claiming to be magistrates and judges have vestment in private prisoner of war camps that they've been calling public prisons, and having the public pay for the buildings of them, but yet they are actually profit centers for human trafficking, including that gives them a locked in and a body of people to experiment on with biological warfare, biological drugs, vaccines, and other poisons, etc., and also to use for promoting their genocide modification programs, etc., and then make the people pay for it, and also put liens on the estates of the people who go through the system. And the people in general have no idea that these are actually private, for-profit human trafficking platforms. And that is your modern version of hell, although they still have hell, but it's more expanded in so much as many of you have heard of the military underground facilities that have been operating all across the world, and with many of their operative command centers being at North America under the jurisdiction of the operatives or the Roman Curia members known as the U.S. Congress, etc. That is also the Exchequer's chambers. But it's an expanded operation in so much as it deals with humans, not just because they haven't paid taxes or homage to the priesthood, i.e. or the popes of Rome or the members of the Roman Curia. And most of you would know the members of the Roman Curia loosely as maybe the Bilderbergers, the Illuminati, Grand Dragons of the Ku Klux Klan, as an example, like Senator Byrd, who's one of his most favorite ghouls was known as Joe Biden, who is now operative praetor. So praetor, Preator, is the actual position of the people who have been operating that you've been calling president. They're really praetors. So these are some of the reality of political dynamics and paradigms that the people are actually dealing with, and they are not aware of it. And while much of the information and realities have been suppressed from the masses, you know, what we try to do here at the House of Reawakening Minds is to present some things without being overburdening with burdening with the people, so that they can start taking responsibility and look at things as in a more real sense, because it's the state of mind that the people have that has much to do with the cures that we must bring ourselves. And this is back to it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to recognize that we have to start taking responsibility for our lives and stop looking for, you know, the rescues of the messiahs in the concepts that they have been telling you, because that was also one of the skilled arts of the dark priesthood, to keep the people passive while they were being destroyed and raped, etc. And they've been quite successful at it. So we can't say that they haven't been successful at it, because they absolutely have. However, because things have are more in the open now, meaning that the dark priesthood they're not using a lot of what you call structured programs as they used to do to cover up their projections and misrepresentations and connotative linguistics. They're just bluntly doing things to the people. And this is also why, I think it was around maybe 16 or 17 years ago, we started sharing with you the evidence of the corporate papers for the United States Corporation, because we know that a lot of people that we've been telling for years that the United States was actually a trading company and not a country. And so we showed the people and shared with you their actual corporate papers, verified copies of their actual corporate papers, so that you could recognize that it's not a country, they are a private corporation. And the fact that they've been bankrupted and they keep producing new shells has been because the Congress for the corporation, as presumed to be by the people, was actually and always has been since 1861. And in fact, kind of like really before that. But as far as documented admission, board of trustees and board of directors for that private corporation of operations of human trafficking, etc. And these are some of the things that have been going on, particularly since occupation of the North. When people make reference to the 1492 era, one of the things that the hybrids have been doing, aside from burning books, was taking much and many of the prime or prize literature and scientific disciplines of the ancient world and actually housing them. And this has much to do with many of the secret societies that they have established, that many of you are familiar with. Because a lot of the advanced disciplines that they may learn and take death oaths of not revealing to the public in general is actually ancient Asiatic African science and culture from the ancient Sabian Moors, and that's the truth. And to cover up the whole dynamics of the ancient Sabian Moors, or they'll talk about Sabbath, which we've done that many times over and over again, to kind of clear the people's mind up. They covered up with the word Jew because they've stole the jewels of our wealth. They stole the jewels or the pinnacle light or the crystal facets of our knowledge, etc. And so today, people are under the impression, as an example, when they're looking at different crafts, Vermana and stuff like that, that they've been seeing more lately than they did before in the skies, particularly if you look in the northwestern areas, and think that they'll call them UFOs and things like that, not knowing that these were kind of like lightweight, back engineered replicas of stuff that we've had for thousands of years, including technology. As an example, so you see this little image here of this little image of an elephant as an example. Packaged energy like this actually ran territories. As far as, like, say, for instance, if you're looking from a jurisdictional perspective of, say, Shakamoxon area, Shekyabi area, say Pennsylvania, Jersey, land of Nod, you call New York, we call that the land of Nod, all the way up to Canaan land, etc. It would be an energy module about this size that actually ran all the energy there. And that is in that whole area and could go further. And that's thousands of years old. It's old stuff. One of the things that is uncomfortable right now, and another reason why we're talking about this, about Hell, Midgard, and the Exchequer's chamber, is because it is important for the people, those who are willing to actually go within themselves and to start activating the old memory of that their mother gave them. You all have it. Because everybody kind of knows that the hybrids are trying to kill the people off. So let's just go through the chase and not beat around the bush. They intend to kill you off. That's just the truth. And then claim Midgard. And it might sound outlandish to you, but actually that's the fact. And I think a lot of times we get into conversations about correcting the political platforms, and getting people to respect, people's right of voting and things like that. And we go through those exercises because for learning purposes. But in the reality of it all, we're really past all that, because that paradigm really is one of the control at modification systems of the engineering that was put in place also to maintain and promote docility. And a lot of times when we talk about constructing instruments and writs, etc., over the years to address the hybrids who have been personating as government, it is much of it actually is for your own learning and for our own learning, because we've been so out of the loop of self-government and not knowing that these people are actually invaders, and that this was actually, they're talking about as lately about the legitimate republic being captive. And the real deal is they're avoiding telling you that the government was captured far before that. It's sort of like occupiers being betrayed by other occupiers among them, and they're battling over an estate and a political platform that originated not with either of them. And so they're still trying to avoid telling the truth about the history here, and the fact that North America is Morocco. And rather than say Casablanca, they'll say White House, because it means Casablanca. And that they have a tunnel system that goes across the planet, and particularly across the north to the south, and even under the water to Cuba and to some of your other islands, etc., actually with what you call intersecting networks. And this is also laid out even from Washington, from the Chrome or the Crown Seat that is known as District of Columbia. And as some of these things, people are looking at some of these things coming out, etc., and looking at them as, devastatingly revealing. I'm not minimizing them, but I'm saying this. We have to go kind of beyond that, because the reality of it, all of this is just to smash your face to come into reality, but you're going to have to kind of advance far beyond that. However, some of these mental exercises that we've been dealing with over the years here have been necessarily kind of like to get your brain working, to be honest with you, with no intention of stagnating you, but also knowing that every time we speak, there's going to be counter moves, so we're careful of what we say, because we know that they're counter moves.
Before you go any further, there are a couple of questions that you might want to address. There were two questions that asked about who were the hybrids, and if there was only one race, then who did they mix with? Aliens, reptilians?
All right. Now, see, now when you know that this is Midgard, and we've been telling you over the years, really, that Earth means inhabited place. And while we've been saying Midgard, I know it's been passing a lot of people's ears. We've told them, but we're careful about how much we say, because we already know that because there's battles that are going on, that much information will be blocked and they'll get none if it's determined by the priesthood. So we try to expose or speak of some things in a manner that it can get people to start using their intelligence, because we also know that humanity also has what you will call trigger points within them in their cell memory, that if you talk along certain lines, that they will wake up in some areas, and many of them will know and start talking among themselves, etc., which is really what we've been trying to seek to do. Because we also know you never say too much, but if you're just blunt and open and honest, not only will most people not believe you, those who have been holding humanity to forced servitude will attack them and you too, and shut down so that the others can't get. And then plus they have a practice of hurting people around you in order to block. And this has been much of the reason why they've been ruling so long. However, the interesting thing that we talked about before, and that we'll mention again, and we've said it, and I know that some of you who know better recognize when it was said to you, when we reminded people that the Earth has already gone through the futon belt and that there's a different energy here. So you would add to that what you know that was going unspoken, and understand that a lot of the methodologies used by the dark priesthood to pull the people into the pit of ignorance wouldn't work no matter what they did. However, because the people are in a state of kind of like a coma state, based on that they've been groomed under dogma systems for so many generations, that their lack of awareness is kind of both a state of self-defense and denial combined. And sometimes people aren't willing to look at themselves or to really admit their own hypocrisy, out of fear, guilt, superstition, people who are around them, imagery, threats for their job. However, we're at a place now that because the platforms that were constructed under the energy of the Piscean star system constellation, it can't operate cleanly under the Aquarian lights. These are things, not things that you don't know. These are things that you, for the most part, most of you already know.
Are you saying that you cannot
Meaning
disclose what the hybrid and cross? What do you mean when you talk about the hybrids? Because that's basically what the question is.
For those of you, I'll give you a source to keep it simple. This is for the average person that's reading or that's sharing with us tonight. Go to your Oxford dictionaries pre-1960 and look up these three things: Anthropopithecus, troglodyte nigger, and look up hybrid, and put them all together, put the definitions all together, and go into the etymology, which you will see within the context of the linear entries. And in your more modern dictionaries, it will not be there. It will be in your older dictionaries. This is again part of the expurgatorius operations, or what the people refer to as book burnings, So when they talk about the burning, they think hell's burning, fire, stuff like that. But it's really a general operation at Midgard.
So,
and you will
wait a minute,
find
let me get these words again.
roughly around entry 8. And so what they would do, they would take the denotation meanings and lower them in the sequence of the linear entries of definitions and insert the connotative linguistics first.
What those words
However, at about point 8,
no, it was
Anthropopithecus.
I got it. And then what was the next one?
Troglodyte nigger.
Okay.
And hybrid.
Okay.
And take all the definitions, take all the denotative definitions, harmonic with its etymology, which you'll see structured in there, and put them together, and you will see very clearly that the hybrid European, to refer him to himself as an Englishman or Angloman, will say, we Englishmen at best are but heterogeneous hybrids. We Englishmen at best are but heterogeneous hybrids. Now, one of the scientific terms given to the heterogeneous hybrid would be Paleolithic man, sometimes referred to as modern man, sometimes referred to by the German tribe naturalists like Mendelein. You can talk about Blumenbach, Linnaeus, etc. And they'll talk about the looking for the framework or the skeletons of the morphing or evolutionary development of hominidae becoming man out of the Pongidae species, etc. Or what they say, the monkey, etc., Darwin, etc., and people like him. And so people would think that the man evolved from the Pongidae Anthropopithecus, and they would be absent logically of those scientific experiments also took place at the plateaus in the Yucatan, not limited to there, dealing with hybriding, also dealing with plant life, not just human, plant life. One of the ways that the hybrids in contemporary times would talk about the hybriding, they made a movie called, and look for this movie because it tells you a lot more than you would think that it would tell you. Because, you look at it as fictional, but while the movie is fictional, it's telling you a lot of truths. Dr. Moreau's Island. Dr. Moreau's Island. Moreau means more in Germanic linguistic French, coming from Central Sudan and Nubia, what you would call Germanic, coming from Sanskrit. So when people look at Iberia and they look at German, the language, they think it's the hybrids language, when actually it comes from among the Picts and the Dubs, etc., from ancient Hikupta. These are some of your Naga tribes, Banti, etc. So understand that the hybrid knows that they're hybrid. Does not mean that hybrids are bad in the sense that, people keep saying, they keep looking at some of the issues among humanity and they start, saying these people are good and these people are bad type things. No, don't look at it that way. Look at it realistically for what it is. The hybrid Europeans, among the hybrid Europeans, many of them have maintained and cultivated their animalistic form, which is also why over the centuries, why many nations have always haven't been having a problem with some of the hybrids, because of some of them have still continued to display a very beastly nature of bloodletting, blood sucking, killing humans, doing cannibalism, etc., which continues to this day. And these are some of the problems that are actually plaguing us, that are coming out, that a lot of people, when they're looking at it as something kind of new or really strange. And we're talking about some of this stuff because it's not new and it's not strange. It's strange. It's strange to the human. And then many of us kind of being uncomfortable because of the hybrids, mistreating our people. And they hide it under the subcategory of connotative linguistics known as the Linnaeus and the Blumenbach operations of taxidermy, and they'll call it racism and prejudice, etc., which is a cover-up for a lot of the real truth about humanity and our condition. So when you're looking at what many of our Bantu tribes here at North America would refer to as the paleface, they were talking about the Paleolith or the heterogeneous hybrid. And of course, you already know, we don't have to tell you that in these last couple hundred years, we've been having extreme problems with the hybrids. But we need to be honest, and we need to start looking at things as they really are and having some comprehension of really what's been going on, so that whatever decisions we make, whatever administrative operations we develop among ourselves, in relationship to others, etc., are based more on truths than on emotional responses and dogmatic, non-linear, not grounded, and not truthful concepts that have been taught under the anthropomorphic structures, some of which we ourselves have structured for teaching, because the customs of Africa have been to create metaphors or to tell stories in metaphor, to transfer information, etc., stuff like that, and to preserve. In another way, some of the methodologies that we use for maintaining customs and traditions and knowledge has been what you call mythology. And by some of these, what they would refer to, that is common when the Moors ruled, was known as the 7 liberal arts, rhetoric, when you're talking about grammar, etc., these disciplines aren't taught now in school in the way they were, years ago. And so a lot of points of reference that people would use as a tool, etymologically, epistemology, etc., orthology, things that were common, just simply common parts of erudition that you would call education today, not being availed to the people. Sometimes when you go into some of these things, it appears to go past the people when it actually shouldn't, because it's actually elementary stuff. However, the hybrid European himself will tell you he's a hybrid. And this is, again, why they have problems with the sun. And so a lot of our people, when you see people talking today, like we were talking today, Dr. Naila, about the chemtrails, and, they've been using the chemtrails to make the people sick, to continue their extermination programs, because they're attacking humanity more and more open now. They're not hiding it as much as they used to. However, people must understand that because of the hybriding, the nervous system of the heterogeneous hybrid is closer to the surface of the skin or exposed to the UV rays of the sun, and it passes through the thin and the less pliable structure of the skin, which is logically the largest organ. And it does damage to the nervous system. Also, from a biological perspective of the physical body, why many of the heterogeneous hybrids, you will see their bodies start breaking down at an earlier age, and people wonder why they have leprosy more often. So the leprosy that would be caused in with many of the hybrids would be today called cancer, and their lesions would become white. And this is what's talked about in the Septuaginta in the Bible as the people who were taken behind the rock until their lesions were all right before they were accepted into society. These are some of the dynamics of really blending or integrating the hybrids into society, into different areas.
May I interject? How would you explain Genesis 1, I think it's 26?
25, 26.
26. So who is saying, let us make man, that scripture, how would you explain that, if at all, into the hybriding, since it says, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and then you get over to Genesis,
Yes.
chapter 2, and over there you've got man being formed out of the dust of the earth, and then you have Adam being put to sleep, and allegedly his rib being taken out, and a woman created.
Now,
so is
that particular part is a metaphor, and this is where you're actually talking about star systems. And also because Eve, everything when you're looking at ancient African culture, as an example, when you're talking about Adam, you're talking about building blocks, or you're talking about scientific molecular structure. When you're talking about Eve, you're talking actually about evolution. Now, in a grammatical sense of preserving linguistic structure, that would be also from an etymological form platform, you would be talking about etymon structure. So whenever you're looking at African culture, you got to look at it multifacetedly, and you also have to study African culture, or this is another reason why they spent so much time trying to destroy so that they could take existing platforms and corrupt them, as an example. So when you're looking at any of your books that are in the Bible, as an example, when people look at Genesis, they're not thinking in general genetics, for one.
Right.
They're looking at what they've been told merely means beginnings. Yeah. No, you're looking at genetics.
But are you not talking about, excuse me for cutting you off,
yeah.
But are we not really talking about an interjection into life that already existed?
Now, this is another thing. So you can't create something that already exists. As an example, just like in the rule of science and the rule of social structure at Midgard, you can't patent something that's natural. Sure. If you get the point. Something that's created implies creating something out of not that which exists, as an example. So modification is not creation in that sense of the word. Now, the other deal of it is because remember how we've been telling people, particularly more in these last few years, because we already know certain things was going to come out, that everybody that's here not necessarily from this planet.
True.
All right. Now, you know that the word God comes from gut, which comes from German, which comes from Sanskrit, what actually means good and is a verb transitive, which you already know. It's not a being. You also know that the same principles of people coming from different areas of the solar systems to Midgard and to other places. From the fact of the matter is, from time that goes unmeasured. There's nothing that you will find on the planet at Midgard that will not demonstrate interdimensional or interstellar travel instruments and vehicles, etc., and all of the art, etc. And you can't put a date on it because you don't have a date on it. There's no time that you can remember when we weren't doing this stuff. What you have at Midgard is this history of hominidae being suppressed, and then the promotion of the dogma systems of the priesthood, which sets time and date in the area of 6,000 years type thing. But this has more to do with preserving the rulership of the priesthood, etc., more than the fact. And not just that. So when you're talking, as an example, when you're talking about the ancient Sabians, right? Well, not ancient, because it's really, they're here. They just don't know. Most of these people don't know their descendants. When you talk about let us is plural, is it not?
It is plural.
When you talk about Elohim, people say Elohim. This is really a perfect example of what you call projection and misrepresentation and connotation. When you say Elohim, to most of our people, they say it means God, don't they?
Yes.
Now, Elohim is plural.
It is.
All right. So Elohim is us, isn't it? So there's a more than just a mere duality, isn't it? Isn't it? So when you see in the Bible when it says, let us make man, you're actually talking about actually operative rulers and competing rulers or competing scientists. And you're talking both scientists, you're talking rulers, you're talking those who rule the high house, or what you call pharaohs, etc., who are actually subordinate or assigned, and actually you would call the matriarchies or monarchies that evolved into the monarchies and the operations of government here at Midgard. And some of the same structure principles are actually applicable elsewhere. And logically, it's sort of like speculative to get into some of these things when the people aren't aware of how Midgard operates, including the fact that most of the people don't even know that this particular Earth is Midgard. It's sort of like trying to get into reasonable conversations with people who don't even know the Earth, and you want to talk about another place. Like
so we're talking about multi-dimensional Earth,
both dimensional and geography.
No, what I'm saying, are we talking about throughout the universe, other Earths? Or are we talking about multi-dimensional?
It's
within
both.
The same. Okay.
It's both and all. Now, the deal of it is, because we've been so closed in at Midgard, there's the concept even that we're domed and have no access out. But the doming has more to do, if and not that it's never been used, with technology, advanced technology that most of the people at Midgard can't comprehend anyway. Do you understand? Because our minds have been suppressed. However, but because on another level, things are being opened up to the those who domicile here in general, You know, because really what's happening, the things are collapsing, which we talk about on what you would call a basic casual level. The Piscean constructs are dissolving. The dimensional thought patterns that were cultivated in the Piscean energy is dissolving. These are not because of, say, you will or I will it to be, but because it is by the nature of things. And because so much electrical charge is happening on the planet now, particularly with the effects of Uranus, that these things can't stay stable anyway. You know, and so what we have is this paradox of the priesthood having ruled for all these few hundred, last 1,000 years or more, with this corruption and corrupting the concepts of the people. They're trying to figure out what to do to maintain the stability of their de facto structures. And our people are trying to figure out how or who to vote for when this stuff is sort of like, this is so beyond the things that, that we have been used to, that the people really just have to prepare their minds for a lot. When you say reawakening minds, it's going to be kind of more real than people think it is on many levels. But my concern is really to try to talk about things that we can affect more currently, like more down to earth, more mundanely, and not to get outlandish. And I don't mean outlandish because it is outlandish in that sense. It's because trying to, argue with a child about riding a motorcycle when they have a tricycle with training wheels at that type thing. And it's not to disregard us, but it also is to project the truth of the matter is that we're going to have to advance. We got a lot of makeup to do, based on the artificial, not the real, the artificial suppression of humanity. Gates are going to be opened up. And so people are sometimes looking at things that they're not capable when they actually are. They actually are. It's just that it's going to be so uncomfortable for a lot of people. And I think these things have to be talked about more openly by people who kind of know some things and don't talk around things, because when you talk honestly, you get attacked. And it's not so much that you're concerned with attack because you know also certain energies, but that to protect people who are around you. But the other deal of it is that comfort zone that the priests have had of getting away with that is being closed out. That's another reason why we're talking about this, because it's going to be opened up more and more and more at a faster and faster rate. And a lot of things that the people see in the geopolitics is kind of like a diversion in a way, but in another way reflective, because the priesthood are acting harmonic in what they know that they've done to humanity, and also what can be and is being done to them now with counter moves. And so my discussions in general is to try to encourage humanity to, like Nobudrali said, the people need to learn to love instead of hate. As truth comes out, people will recognize that a lot of the destructive anti-evolutionary or anti-ascension attitudes was taught to them, and that is not necessarily in the nature of the people to support or to be naive to, or to be complacent while the cannibalistic hybrids have been ruling and have actually destroyed society at Midgard. And I think that a lot of times the way when people are looking at this, they think that Midgard itself has been in such a dense atmosphere prior to the Futon belt, transit, that this is permanent. My position has always been that I don't see a reason why Midgard can't be a better place for all to live, truthfully, even though it's been contaminated because the conditions are artificial for the most part. The poverty is artificial. The destructions of nations, etc., has been an artificial operation for rulership of the priesthood. And much of the problems that the people have reflective in their personal lives has been more of the jealousy work and the greed work of the priesthood, and not an operation of nature at Midgard. And I think that should be addressed by the scholars, the philosophers, the true Gnostics, distinguished from people who've been claiming to be priests and religious. Not that they don't know, but they have an agenda, and their agenda has never been in the best interest of humanity at large. And then you have the other problem with the hybrids, kind of angry because they have pretty much stolen the earth. In some ways, they've gained the whole world, and yet the sun that gives life is seeking to kill them. They have that personal physical affair with the sun, which is why they're doing another reason upon multiple reasons why they're doing chemtrails and other putting other metals in the air, like aluminum, barium, and other other germ warfare to make the human sick. It's sort of like robbing the world and recognizing they're not going to be able to necessarily enjoy the spoils. It's sort of like trying to kill off the true people of the earth, trying to steal the earth, and the sun, that is one of the governors of this particular sphere or place to live, is seeking to kill them itself, which is beyond the geopolitics on the surface. That's an interesting dynamics. Now, exchequers. I'm going to go into exchequers so that the people can look at exchequer and understand the operations, or how the hybrids think when they're operating their governments. The exchequer. Now, when you're looking at the takeover operations of Phoenicia or the Iberian Peninsula, and then you look at the heterogeneous hybrids, or what we refer to as the hybrid Europeans, corrupting the platforms of structure of government. The exchequer is that department of the English government which has charge of the collection of the national revenue, or now what you would call under, say, Canada, the U.S. Corporation, Inquisition operations, Fleet Street, England, the Circuit Church and the Chancery, Queen of England, etc., Windsor's, etc. You would call that, the IRS. That would be the Treasury Department. And as you all know, for those who know geopolitics, that the defunct Treasury Department of the United States Corporation Company, which was been defunct, I think, was since about 1921 in that area, and the enforcement of the Inquisition operations known as the IRS. The IRS has been blended into the Treasury Department, which is really the exchequer's chamber, etc., of operation. And so you would be dealing with the chancery, or what they would call the chancery courts of England, operating via the Bar Association to run the court systems of human trafficking and human trade at North America, and the judicial systems, which they've been doing actually for years. I would venture to guess, when people are talking about Woodrow Wilson and Jekyll Island, and they're talking about the absence of gold and silver, etc., that they may wisely look back to 1861 and look at that operation, etc. So you look at the neutralization or the capturing of the legitimate republic platform structured by virtue of Ordinance of 1787 and the Constitution for the United States, introduced for their operations here under treaty by the Honesty Confederation of Moors, etc., which is a political confederation, not a tribe in the concept that the people have been told. So when you look at that breaching, the breaching of the entire political platform, you can comprehend even, say, with the operations of the Inquisition, revenue services not really being operative, which is also why you see them sending out these so-called checks. You notice how to say checks? Mm-hmm. They're coming from the Exchequer's chamber. They are. And so you'll see the praetors are battling to try to maintain the platform structures of Piscean constellation energies, and it can't survive. Problem is they're keeping the people diverted from really looking at these things, because so many of them shall be and are and should be held guilty of both misprision of treason and crimes against humanity, as a starter. Now, as things progress, particularly in this cycle of what they refer to as 2021, which is really not the real date. We'll get into that later because I don't want to get diverted. Things will be introduced probably, and I can't say because I don't have what you call inside knowledge on that, but I do know from mental projection the direction that it's going. And they're going to release, they're going to be forced to release, not that they want to. Some of the technology that we talked about earlier, like this, that will actually move towards stop attacking Midgard itself, to maintain really beyond obsolete technology that we've been using for hundreds of years, not just the last 100 years or the last couple of hundred since the hybrids have been occupying North America. Because the truth of the matter is that the technology and the disciplines of, say, as an example, 20,000 years ago is more expansive, more comprehensive than what exists now, etc. So, but I would look at more likely they're going to probably expose more of the energy technology. That's the energy output, etc. And that will be inclusive in both of your travel principles or vehicles, etc. But it will be introduced in such a way that while it disrupts the dogma systems, which they must go all together, it will disrupt almost every established organizational system of both transportation, energy transfer, heating systems, what you refer to as an electrical grid now, which is kind of like very base. That's really very base. But for people to look at it, we'll just say the electrical systems, and find that basically they could take a module, actually smaller than this pendant, and run this city, and that's the truth. And this idea, that they're still promoting, the monetary system the way we use things now, that had more to do with maintaining control over the people than it had to do with actual necessity. So there's this mentality that, the moneta, the mint system of Yakimthaler operations is an important construction within organized society, and that's not totally true. It has been more, we've been groomed to it, and so we look at that as a necessary methodology, but the fact of the matter is not really. And so we're going to get past that too. But anyway, for them to maintain the health conditions on the planet, has been necessary for them to both hide the truth about the advancement of humanity on the planet, hide the fact that they've been actually warring on us, hide the fact that 90% of all sicknesses they created, because the body forms that we have are so really, even as they are now, so advanced that the fact of the matter is that most of these things that we refer to as sicknesses, can't really do us in, kind of like, and so they actually have to do what you call or operate, like they talk about all the time, the Antichrist, and they're looking at it as some belief system. The Antichrist is really the scientific work of the priesthood to actually kill off humanity and humanity's developmental potential. That's more the Antichrist than this idea of worship that the people have.
Right, because the Christ consciousness, it's against the consciousness.
That's right.
That we could obtain and should obtain in order to, reach.
But the consciousness correlates, also conjoins to other beingness.
Of course.
See,
we're connected.
The other beingness, and so this is now, then you're getting back to your cognizance about this misconception of gods. And like you said before, how like when people start debating those things with the anthropomorphic concepts, they fail to recognize that the anthropomorphic Jesus told them already that you're all gods. When they keep on having these arguments and debates about godness, God this and God that, and they don't even know what God is. And they're gods, but not in the concept that they've been using it, of competing with each other. And necessarily, concept is wrong. It just means the good. And also, when you're looking at the positions of Midgard in relationship to the seven sisters, that we know as Santa Claus's sleigh,
The Big Dipper?
Yeah, Big Dipper. When you look at the Big Dipper in his four positions of the four gates of the universe, from the position of Muhammad. And so when you say from the position of Muhammad, that means Muhammad's mountains, from the positions of the mountains, as you look into the heavens and you see the four positions of the seven sisters, it creates what you know as swastika, which is why the swastika is ancient among Africans or the people of the planet, etc. And why they used to use henna. You'll see when the daughters would choose a mate, etc. They'd take henna and they'd dress their hands up and they put swastika on there. Sometimes they put swastika on here. And then you'll see also what they would know called the Mundane Cross. So when you're looking at the Mundane Cross, you're looking at the seven sisters in the four gates. So the Mundane Cross is also what they call in ancient Coptic, the Coptic cross, where you see the cross with the circle around it. So the cross with the circle around that would represent also the seven sisters in your four gates. And so these symbolisms also in African culture actually tell the story of the heavens. And so when you're looking at the ephemerides as an example, it doesn't dawn on people to think what they've been thinking is some kind of worship system is actually star charting. It doesn't, they don't look at it that way. But that's what it is. So when, and so you have this paradox that's going on even right now where these clashes between different nation states and people among nations trying to solve their economic and political problems, but they're trying to do it without telling the truth of how we got to the where we are. And they're trying to restore the economic systems based on the blind faith systems of Sylvester and all that, with this tithing system that they have been governing the planet for quite some time with. And so the people are in this state of mind that they can't live because they've been trained to this, that they cannot survive if they don't pay taxes to Rome. They just they'll move Rome and instead of saying taxes, instead of saying tithe, they'll say tax. And so they don't know that this is where the priesthood, by design and by fraud, have actually infiltrated or taken over 90 or more % of all governmental structures on Midgard Earth. And this is the source of almost all of your problems. And the fact that they know much of, not all, the ancient sciences of Hikupta, and they hide. So when they're talking about the ancient science, in modern world, some people say Moorish science. They'll say the Saba knowledge or keeping the Sabbath all mean the same thing. They're simply really talking about how things really work here at Midgard. That's the truth. They will not tell the people the truth that when the 72 scholars, they'll say septa, which means seven. Well, they'll not tell the truth about the 72 scholars that the popes assigned to modify the Septuaginta and to leave out of the Septuaginta Fatima, Muhammad, etc. So when people talk about Muhammad and Fatima, they're thinking Holy Quran only, etc. And it never dawns on them that the science of the hemispheres, the northern hemisphere of the Emephorites, is symbolized by Muhammad. In the secret societies, when they refer to the mountaintop, they're talking about Muhammad's mountain, which is also dealing with the hex alpha principle of balance and isonomy, which is the carpenter's tools symbolized by the compass and the square, or they say Jesus was a carpenter. So these metaphors are actually dealing with charting the stars, charting navigation, not just on Midgard or in the waters, but also actually with star systems. So when you're talking about a sextant and a rudder, that has always been used for navigation, for mooring on this planet, on at Midgard, which is why whether you were referring to airships or or ethereal ships, or you're talking about water ships. So if you're talking about Yahweh, which is really earth, air, fire, and water, not a being. Whenever you would transport the ships, air, fire, water, earth, you would call it mooring. And so this is how the term, even though they hide the real origin, because they don't tell the people the real history, whenever you're moving, shipping, they'll call it mooring the ship. And because the hybrids have taken over the imperial dynasties of Hikupta, they'll hide it behind the word or the name Peter. So when you see them promoting Peter, Pita, Pata, you know, and so their people are looking at, you know, from a connotative perspective, they keep looking at men or these images of a guy in a jalabu walking around loving Jesus type thing. But that's for children. That's for children. But you're really simply talking about dynasty operations, ephemerides readings, and charting, and movement and mooring of ships of Yahweh, which we air, fire, earth, and water, all the methods. And so people are just, you know, kind of don't get it when they're looking at travel through the earth. They're looking at travel on the earth. They're looking at travel above the earth, etc., via earth, air, fire, and water. And that's just simply a part of the fact of how this planet has always been operating. The difficulty we have right now is that the tools and the institutions that have been used, and you can call them the Antichrist tools, to keep humanity in a box, sort of like in a box. And then when you look at the Berber tribe stories, like the Arabian Nights and stuff like this. This is where also you'll see the metaphors and the stories where the genie gets out of the bottle, and that operates on multiple levels. Because remember, when you look into African stories, they're always telling you more than one thing. So there's both them finding out, or what they would call the secrets of alchemy, or using base metals to create gold. And we got more gold on this planet than they'll ever tell you anyway. So it's sort of like for them to go through all this stuff is really just trying to maintain control. But their real concern is us getting that among us, among our people. They know that they are, because it operates in nature, that some of these women, by virtue of their vibrational state and what you say, the harmonics with Midgard or with Mother Nature, will produce what has always been called champions. And the champions is another cover up for the unique. They're not really unique, but you can say every once in a while they will give birth to daughters and sons who come here for the specific purpose of bringing balance. And this is where, say, the images anthropomorphic of like Serapis and Jesus and Muhammad and Zikrab, etc., all of them, that's where that comes in. You know, but these are only stories of energies. So and this is also when you see the keys to rulership, or the rod, say my rod and the staff which will comfort me, and you see the high house, the ruler of the high house doing like this. That's the rod, that's the staff. Those are tools.
Okay.
And weapons. You know, so
when you would see
that's the rod and the staff that you talk about in the Bible. The rod and that staff shall comfort me. There was protectors. And you see the Ankh. So the Ankh is actually the womb. See, so but you got to look at the metaphor. See, the Ankh is symbolic of the womb, but the womb, though it's in the body, it's also, because it's not immediately what you call visual from the eye as you see it, as you see the body, you understand its operation. So it's an abstract. And so that would be called what? The secret chamber, you see? And so that's the dark chamber. And so, and it's they call it sometimes the chamber of the moon. And so when you look at the different, even the different temples and things that Africans did or constructed over the millennia, they would take on those names and stuff like that. And so that you'll know, because it all has to do with the moon and the sun. And that's not the only sun. It's not the only moon. However, how they operates at Midgard is that it governs the flow of the water. So you'll see one face of it. And it operates on 13 and on 9. And so you'll see as women and all other feminine principle that's manifest in the physical produces, it will be governed by the moon calendar. That's why when you look at African culture, you got to look at it from a bicameral perspective, so that a lot of the confusion that exists now would not exist. See, so when the hybrids teach the history, they will teach the history only by the sun calendar when they know that it's bicameral. And then you will see in the Picts in say in Phoenicia, you'll see them the ancient Moorish Picts. They will use a symbol of the eagle, the double-headed eagle, with its head pointed two different ways, opposite 190.
Is that like the two birds?
That's why they use that with 33 degrees.
And the two-party system?
Yes. But it's two chambers of the brain. It's the two chambers of the brain, to the chambers of heaven. And so when the connection of all of the sites are in place, because you got to remember, when they ruled, everything was basically done on 7. So even the governmental provinces were generally 7. So they would have, like, say, for instance, if you had a nation state, it would be divided into 7 provinces or 7 territories. That's true.
Someone asked if the 7 sisters were also indicative of the 7 continents.
Well, they would say that, although there's not in that sense. Because the reality, we would say North America and South America, but North America and South America is one continent. In truth.
But you were connected. Well, go ahead.
But go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to interject earlier when you were talking about some of the things that are in the pipeline to be revealed, that have existed, for a long period of time, that have been hidden from humanity or the masses. We always call the masses, like, say, the 99%.
Yeah.
So in terms of what we've been listening to with regard to, say, the med beds and things like that, things that regenerate limbs, things that regenerate minds and take away.
Now you're going back to Genesis.
Right.
See, so Genesis, again, is not even what people think it is. No. Even the view, because the book has been majorly altered. The interesting thing is, even though they altered the books, because that book is contemporary to us, truthfully, to be honest with you. But even with the modification, they really couldn't hide everything. That's why it's been necessary for them to keep wars going on, putting nations against nations. And then they themselves would take the place as Vicar, which is also why the hybrids refer to themselves as Vicar. Right. And so write that down, you all. Vicar. Vicar.
Vicar.
Yeah.
Vicar of Christ.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is that even with, the technology that perhaps that I have, which we're not allowed to say what it can do. We can't, what they have. They have it so that can't say that it can't. It doesn't diagnose. It doesn't.
The hybrids have it that you can't.
Right. We can't.
All right. Now let's get.
I'm just.
Yeah. No, I'm saying I'm making that point because
Right.
while you're saying what you're saying, because I want you to say what you're saying.
Because we're told that we can't, because the people
who the who is. I was just naming who the who is.
I don't want to put the the alphabet, it starts with F and ends with A.
Yeah.
So they don't allow certain things to be advertised, just like you can't say certain herbs or whatever would heal,
because they are attacking Midgard.
Right.
Now that is part of
Taj,
go ahead.
I got a point.
Go ahead.
Make a point.
No, I just want you to say that's part of the Christ.
How he is, right?
That's the Antichrist.
He already knows my thoughts. At least he thinks he did. The point I wanted to make with that technology in something that I shared with you was a case in point of what's possible.
Oh yeah. Yes.
My father.
Share it. You should share it.
Yeah. My father, who was given a diagnosis of you were doing a class August 15th when we got to put him in the hospice situation.
Yes.
And is still with us, and the technology that I have, and I put it up here and I posted and I run it through. You saw a picture of my dad.
Yes.
On that Friday. Whatever Friday was. And I was able to get in and
look like a state of transition.
Right. I was able to get in, scan him with this technology, and then come home and begin to send out these energetic, whatever I can't say they are. Send him these things. When I went yesterday, which was
singing happy birthday to you.
89th solar return.
Singing happy birthday all the way through.
His own happy birthday. Yeah. And they're telling me in the last 5 or 6 days, his condition had just markedly improved. And I say to the woman, well, this is what I've been doing since Friday. And took a picture, and it looks like night and day.
Yeah. Like really.
And then
absolutely.
Some of you saw the post, but if you saw what he looked like 6 days prior,
please,
you would have said
he looked like he was transiting.
Yes. So what I'm saying is this type of technology and all this stuff does exist. And they kept these things from us. Instead, they would like to ply us with poisons that are called medicines. Pharmaceutical is pharmacy. It's like the word it's witchcraft.
Word virus means poison.
Yeah, but
it does.
Yeah. So I'm saying there's things that exist that people don't even have to go through, but yet we
did have to go through.
Yeah, we don't have to go through because the ability to do certain things has always been there.
Now let's look at this. We look at these problems at Midgard, and what we do, you notice that when we speak about what the priesthood has been doing and is doing, we always come from a position of apologizing to tell the truth, and then modifying while we're attempting to imply or signify the truth.
Right.
There's a part of the Antichrist operations. However, the point that I'm saying is when and because I really didn't want to interrupt you, I just want to make a point that when we start mentioning that when we keep saying they, you got to start naming who. From a metaphysical point of view, when we want to solve these problems, we got to stop being vague. We can be vague by virtue of protecting some, while the dark priesthood is still in power and while they're still willing to and able to cause havoc at Midgard. We want to just pretty much put it this way. We know that when we're talking about we're talking about the heterogeneous hybrids, but not all of them. It's just that the dark priesthood that had been doing the damage to Midgard have chosen that bed of physicality as their coven, one of their covens. That's all. And so he hides among them.
It just makes me frustrated and angry when I hear about people becoming incapacitated, debilitated,
and you think it's something in nature, and it really isn't when you find out that none of this stuff is natural.
Get rid of the people,
because no, genocide them out. See, get rid of is mild. It's like kind of like, he unjustly took my stuff. No, he robbed me. How about that? You know what I mean? And a much, even as we talk about the issues of jurisdiction, while we're approaching some of these things that we're talking about, we're really trying to help the people to be courageous enough to start rejecting that which is false. Because the one of the problems that we have, and I understand, the people's hesitation, because Rome has presented themselves and backed it up that they are vicar, and this is why our people are fearful, because Romans do what Romans do.
Yeah.
And this is back to the issue: are the people willing to admit to themselves, that the problems on the planet is that Rome has claimed godship and lordship, and they have been doing these things to humanity and to Midgard, and we have sat back and made excuses for them, and then also keep making excuses rather than admit what we can actually see. And then we keep covering up our pineal, and then charging everyone else with calling the seeing of our pineal evil, meaning that you're not supposed to see what's going on. So you cover up your pineal gland, etc., which is really, the blending of all your 7 sights. And so this is again where it's important to recognize the administration over and maintenance of hell on earth has much to do with suppressing the thought, suppressing the activation of the pineal gland, misrepresenting the disciplines of ancient Exchequer and going beyond that, contaminating every discipline, so that when the people begin to become aware of the disciplines, they would call all the disciplines evil, rather than recognize that the hybrids have actually used them as fronts. The same way they would use, as an example, one of the most common sources to feed the vampires among the hybrids has openly, and is known around the world, been what they call the Red Cross.
Yeah.
Under the guise of helping people with blood transfusions and stuff like that. And they was really making some what you would call an elixir that they do the ritual with. Here's the body of Christ, and here's the blood, and the people look at the ritual and don't know that these people are heterogeneous hybrids, and that's just a ritual of what they've been doing for centuries. Not knowing that they really are vampires, like for real. And so again, even when they put them in the movies, after a while, people look at the movies, and so the people look at these things as just symbolisms of rituals, and not really comprehending that they're representative of realities of what has been going on for centuries. However, because the platforms of the Piscean era are falling apart, these things need to be discussed more openly, so that the people can come to some resolve of coming together, learning to love instead of hate, and start using their intelligence to actually formulate and reconstruct legitimate, equitable, moral, and ethical platforms of governmental operations for Midgard, because we have a lot of work to do for cleanup. Meanwhile, while that's going on, as the energies of the Piscean priesthood, which would include almost every one of these institutional platforms that we have looked for guidance from to prepare ourselves for the civilized world has actually been anti-civilization and anti-Christ, which is really the major source of your problems at Midgard. And it is so pervasive that just to speak on it lightly really doesn't give the subject matter justice. And so I would always signify on certain things and try to get people to look at certain legal phrases and words and certain terms that have been used so that people can be willing to think for themselves. Because it's also, whereas as this stuff, Antichrist stuff comes out, a lot of people mentally may not be able to handle it. And that's another reason why we're talking openly.
We've talked about that. The people are so indoctrinated into or by the lies and the deceptions and the cover-ups that when the truth comes, you know how they say you can't handle the truth?
Meaning they're not willing to handle the truth. But yes, go ahead.
Some people have
you don't want to know the truth.
Some people have so much vested in the lie, in the deception, that when the truth comes, not only is it a mental upset, but they have like I said, they have invested in the lie. Vested and invested. And they're not going to like what happens when there's a reversal, if you will, of things. When things come to light and you cannot use people and have the advantage over people like you've had over the past couple hundred years.
Yes. Now, and this is this is the area where part of the area where we're dealing with right now is the people have been trained, and this is false premise, to keep looking for these gods outside of themselves. They've been trained to trust the institutions that were in place to so-called serve mankind. So they're this mentality that they have interest in it. They don't know that they were the turkey that was being served. Truthfully. Now, another part of the problem that the priesthood have, even some of your lower ghouls, on a lower level that are dealing with things like council people, mayors, and things like that, governors, people on lower hierarchy level, they don't want the people to find out because they know that the people will come directly for them. Like for real. However, the other problem that exists, and this is the discomforting and the gray area, is that the people have been so damaged by these institutions of guilt, fear, and superstition that they're overlooking the fact that they're actually collapsing. It's sort of like they're so used to the kind of like the symbolic, because there's two ways you look at the dragon. They'll say the reptile or the dragon. It's a conquering thing. It's activation thing. It's not altogether negative. It's also experience. Is that they're so used to the hybrids doing so much damage that they fear to resist or to reject the hybrid, because the hybrid always does damage. And my projection with this is that if they would chill out, lean back, pay attention, they would recognize that you have a situation here, whereas the hybrid system is mortally wounded, and it's in a position that either you go or they go. That's where we are, kind of like. And if the people aren't willing to put up a fight, meaning that they're really not willing to stand for the truth, they will be sacrificed. And it will be because they've agreed to it. However, I don't think many of the people see that we're at that point. How like they're so used to say seeing certain things in disorder, not knowing that they were controlled things, and that because the idol god systems have never had any competition, pardon me, they've been able to thrive without what you would say rejection, and been able to achieve their means because no one would stand up because they feared that they would be defeated. However, the wisdom is to see that they're really collapsing for real and not just from the manipulations.
And people need to get used to the fact that much of what they become accustomed to doing, having, seeing is gone and never coming back.
Exactly. The platforms and the system, see, because this is what you got to look at. Like the same way that people are looking at electric vehicles being introduced in their minds, they're looking at electric. It is so juvenile because electric vehicles is like low-level technology that was operating 1,000 years ago.
Listen, some of the ancient art that you've looked at, some we've looked at, and what they were doing, they would show the bottom half of the bottom or 2/3 of the painting in pictures. When they now started revealing things, you'll see the light of God is shining down on the people as they walk. And then you see in the full picture that these are flying ships that were like spaceships that actually people
Ramanas, etc. Yes.
Fire, these vehicles, the airships that were way back
now
then.
So now when you're talking about Yahweh, right? Because you're talking about that. Now you're talking about the elements of the earth, air, fire, and water. Now you're talking about what? The chemical tables, the metal tables, the physical tables, the crystal tables. That's the jewel. That's the Jew. It's sort of like the idol gods images that have been so successful in ruling over humanity are collapsing, and they're uncomfortable about it on both sides. Those who were ruled and those who have been misruled. Because you got to see as the real human experience starts coming out, the things that have controlled us mentally with the psychic attacks, including our misconceptions of gods, let us make man, just even that simple, opens up to a whole new realm of other comprehension and information that demonstrates that our concepts have been part of our prison. So we looking at, it's sort of like someone being caged in, and they come to the gate that's locked, and they look at the gate as quote unquote the way type thing, when the gate is only part of the constriction, part of the mechanism, and it's far beyond that you really need to seek, that you didn't know to seek. And this is again why we're talking about the exchequers. So you all, when some of you will receive checks in the coming weeks from the platform of the Praters, still trying to save the systems of Pisces while it's being dismantled, and it's being dismantled. So people are still looking at the mundane level of the battle of the political platforms, when what I'm saying to you is that is really juvenile, and it goes far beyond that. So look at it for those who aren't willing to look further, but know that what you're seeing is a dance for you. It's a dance for you to keep you busy on one hand, but it's also a dance for you to prepare to open up. And that's the truth. And so what we want to seek among ourselves are those who are open enough mentally and spiritual enough relative to morals and ethical principles that are just in nature. You don't need no mystical teaching for this, to reactivate social political platforms in honor and with integrity to help humanity go through this crisp period, ascension period. That's true.
We have questions. I have a question here. Let's see. Where we go? This is from Justin Garris. It says, where or how does the philosopher's stone come into play regarding the activation of all our glands? Are all of its touted capabilities true, or is it another allegory?
It's everything. Almost all these things these monuments and things that we create are simply our relationship to things, but are reminders. Not unlike, like, say, when you remember how we looking at Chakamoxon territory or Philadelphia territory, and they were talking about old forts, and they're looking at underground, and you see after all these couple centuries, the wood is dry, and you see people's basements damp with all these structures, but yet you see these bricks, arch bricks, and you see underground tunnels, and they're just as dry as they were from when they were built, that some of the doors could be used right now and they're not having deteriorated. So the deal of it is to understand that the assumptions that people have that we've advanced, distinguished from, and opposed to actually being stagnated. Do you understand? That in itself, the realization of people having to accept that is sort of like a mental shock, but it is already in the workings, which is again why we're having this conversation. However, what I think that we need to view is that we have a responsibility to ourselves to go through the exercise of learning and comprehending some basic principles, etc., so that we are more capable and competent in exercising what our people have been constantly talking about, self-determination, and in another word, you might say self-government. And so, but recognizing, again, as we've been telling people for years, a lot of things that we're doing now will not be doing later, but it's by necessity of development and not a necessity of permanence of institutional operations. So some of the things we're doing now is only to kind of get us caught up, and you might say caught up, but we're getting into the race, put it that way. So that from among us, there can be competent beings who can be taken or ascended to a little bit more level, so that we can, because the real missionary work right now is cleaning up Midgard and its inhabitants, and that's the real truth. And I think that's a simple way of keeping it simple, not making it complex. Because the spooky games of dogmatism, not only didn't work, they don't work, and they will not be institutions in that nature in the present, past, future.
Seems like they might be getting some interference with some of it, like they might be blocking some. But that's a good point of segue to at least let them know that we will be doing some private Zoom classes, and we will be announcing that
Yeah,
hopefully
because we can't, you really can't be you can't be open, not because you can't be open. It's just that they'll block it so the people don't get it because they're battling to keep their power.
Absolutely. So I'm trying to see if there are any more.
They're battling to keep their power, even though, and it's so you have a kind of like though it's also multifaceted. You have this duality that they're looking at on the even surface of the people becoming awakened or reawakening, and we say reawakening because people, what they think is new, discovering that stuff ain't new. It's not really.
Somebody asked this. I guess this is like from the last question. Somebody else says the Rosetta Stone is different then.
The Rosetta. When you look at the Rosetta Stone, let's look at, say, the Napoleonic Wars, and when they got the Rosetta Stone, that was one of the keys, or part of the informational keys, to what they would refer to as letting the genie out of the bottle. What you would kind of refer to as a lot of the metaphysical nature, character of ancient Hikupta, ancient Amexem. And because I think when people are looking at alchemy, they're usually projected to look at, or encouraged to look at, taking base metals and producing gold, with the metal chart, and from that perspective, and not look at the alchemy inclusive of the biological zoology or zodiacus aspect also in the alchemy. And so this is where a lot of the hybrid Europeans have been reverse engineering, and also taking your zodiacus knowledge and Gnostic knowledge and applying what we call in these days the dark magic, or yes. And it's not unlike trying to get people to be reasonable and recognize, just because you can drown in water, recognize that water is also your life. And coming to a comprehension of the use of the laws of nature, the use of the elements of nature, and not the misuse of the elements of nature. And the alchemical science, both social engineering or social organization, etc., is the area that most people will look at when they look at the Rosetta Stone. But you've got to look at the problems that we've had with the hybrids, is that they've always taken everything that they've generally learned from ancient Babylonia and made it dark. That's really what our problem is. That's really a great part of our problem. So and so we have this real refiner's soap problem where we have to learn to separate the wheat from the chaff type thing. We can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So therefore we have to go to the depths of our intelligence so that we can make discernment. And we clearly cannot depend on the hybrids for guidance. Although by virtue of them battling to stay in power, they will reveal certain things if you have the eyes to see it. Mm-hmm. So, when you're looking at and so this is why it's important, even though it's very mundane in a sense, for people to shed their whole concept of what they thought hell was. and understand all of their problems been coming from these people that they thought was government, that the people that they called their government was actually a coven of dark priests. And that's a fact. However, the elements and the symbolisms that were often used are not necessarily negative. They were just simply misrepresented and made negative. And you can look at it even harmonic with the very problem, like where African people are also referred to as people of the sun, where we're harmonic with the sun, and you find that some hybrids are absolutely the opposite. And so you can kind of comprehend in the nature of things how some paleoliths, where you love the sun, they hate the sun. Just the circumstance of the biology. And when you see the cultivation around those things, you don't justify, but you can understand the mentality, distinctions. And this is another reason why a lot of our people sometimes don't understand the reasoning of the heterogeneous hybrid in their dealings with humanity and the sun. How come they put poison in the air? How come they're trying to block the sun? Duh. Sun trying to kill them? Duh. I mean, that's not a defense, but you have to kind of understand they have a different outlook, many of them, in the atmosphere of Midgard. Why? Because a hybrid it is not a original hybrid, heterogeneous hybrid specifically, an Ingla man or Paleolith or troglodyte nigger is a mixing by scientific method, not by some other accidental circumstance necessarily, of two different species to create another species. And so you have what you call a species of humanity in purgatory, an alchemical or alchemy purgatory. And you will call that species Roman. And this will be talked about in the Genesis, where the red, ruddy, hairy one, because red, ruddy, that's what Roman means. Roman means red, ruddy. So the red man is really the Paleolith. That's why you see them start calling the Bantu, Moors tribes and Naga tribes of North America, red man type thing. No, the red man is the Paleolith. It's not a negative. It's just you got to really know the origin of a lot of these sociological terms that we assume to be one thing. They're not necessarily what you thought they were. And it's not to be misused. It's to be looked at, comprehended, overstood, understood, understood, so we can start, trying to bring some harmony back here. This is again why the treaties were put in place. We're trying to, stop all this confusion. But in the process, you can't hide the truth and fix things. You can't fix things with a lie. Just the truth.
Waiting for more questions.
Hmm?
I'm looking at more comments than questions. Let me say. There was one person said they had received 3 checks, but they hadn't cashed any of them. 3 of the, I guess, the checks from the stimulus.
Oh, yeah.
I remember seeing it.
Well, I'm telling you, they're coming from the Exchequer's chamber. And that, as a matter of fact, that's where you get the word check from Exchequer. So even in the everyday operations that people have assumed to be one thing, it isn't what you think it is. And for those, if you want to look in ancient Iberia, um, and look at the structure of government, that has much to do with what you're dealing with now, of how they contaminate, say, right now you'll see democracies, and you'll see monarchy, etc. So look at heptarchy. So when you look at heptarchy, you're looking more of original structures, what we talked about, where your provinces were broken up into your different tribal and nation systems of 7 parts in harmony with Saba culture or Sabian Moorish culture, because so much of everything dealing on 7 in the cycles of life was always constructed into our social structure. That's why 7 has always been so important numerically within Asiatic African culture.
Now, when you look up the definition of that, it says it's a noun, plural, heptarchies, often initial cap letters. The 7 principal concurrent Anglo-Saxon kingdoms supposed to have existed in the 7th.
Supposed to
have existed in the 7th and 8th centuries. Government by 7 persons, an allied group of 7 states or kingdom, each under its own ruler.
And now what you have, so now when you look at the Picts and the Moors and the Dubs, you have to put it in perspective, because when people are looking at Iberia now, in these days, and Phoenicia, which are now known as Europe, their mind is always usually projected to the heterogeneous hybrid or the hybrid Europeans, because of the operations in these last few hundred years. So when they're looking at Iberia, their mind doesn't immediately run to Africa, although they're dealing with Africa still. You see the problem? This is why, again, and for those of you who already know, because I know most of you who come here, we're telling you stuff you already know, truthfully. What we're trying to do is kind of bring some harmony among us all, so that the people that are reawakening on the planet can burn less energy on useless games, useless organizational structures, or structures that are designed to more or less kill their time, or what you call stagnate them, or put them on a mental treadmill so that they can be sacrificed later. Because they're going to have to go to their divine mind in order to solve problems. Belief systems, as we have been taught, never did work for humanity. However, they were a source of social solace by design to comfort a body of people who have been devoured, or would you say defeated. And so the dogma systems of the social solace systems, this is where the origin of them being promoted as religion from a sociological point of view, that's how that evolved. But nevertheless, it has become an artificial reality among our people, and that artificial reality must be dissolved in order for our people to start dealing with the true sciences of nature, so that we can start fixing society here at Midgard. And so, we're really having a purging that must take place. And again, while we're having this casual discussion about the lordship of the Exchequer's lordship of maintaining hell on at Midgard, because that's essentially what they've been doing. And we need to kind of have a less emotional conversation about it, a less emotional view, and a more metaphysical, scientific, and actual political, geopolitical analysis of what's really going on so that we can start constructing solutions and begin to trust ourselves that among us, there are capable ones. However, and I know that you all are thinking some of these things, our difficulties have been as the people we're awakening, finding honorable men and women who are not just competent in their Gnostic basis, but in their sincere honor and integrity on actually helping to clean up Midgard, because it's a job for everyone, because every man, every woman, and every child must confess their own in this Aquarian light, and that's just simply the truth. And I think because the people have been geared or groomed into the sacrificial lamb type mentality, they're still looking for this sacrificial Jesus image or Serapis image that they can sacrifice, on an altar to cover up for the sin of ignorance type stuff. And the deal of nature is not allowing that, and you must be aware of that.
There's a brother here, Eritrean here in the House of Reawakening, and I can't call his name because everything there looks like it's written in hieroglyph, but just to acknowledge, because you talk a lot about Eritrea and Saba and so forth. So we recognize you, brother. Just can't say your appellation with that. But let me just say if there's anything else. If there are any questions, if you have questions that that are relevant, that you want to no personal questions, like help me out with this problem questions, but general questions that you would like to ask Grand Sheik, if you mind. I'm trying to scroll through the comments to see if there are any specific questions that need to be answered that are not personal in nature, but more of a general nature.
The other thing too, Dr. Naila, if we could get the people just beginning, and they're doing it truthfully because they really are, to start thinking again. The solutions are in them, but people have been trained for so many generations by the priesthood not to believe in themselves, not to trust themselves, and to keep looking for so we're creatures of habit, and they're depending on people maintaining the habits that they've been trained in for generations to keep looking to the priesthood, not knowing that the priesthood was really the vampire. And this is again why the dark priesthood has been successful, because they've been playing the vicar. That's why it's important. Explain to them people the vicar, please, Dr. Naila.
The vicar means the substitute.
So if it's a substitute, it's also a placebo, isn't it?
Right. It means according to them, and I'm looking over there, I have the catechism. I'm sure it's a little brown book. I have a catechism book over there, but in particular, in the catechisms, one of the things they'll say, for instance, who changed the Sabbath to Sunday? And they said, we did.
The vicars.
The vicars did. We made the Sabbath Sunday.
So what did they do? They contaminated, didn't they?
Yes. And
they don't deny it. They don't deny it.
Well, we didn't read, so they can put everything in the book and tell the truth and absolve themselves.
See, from a karmic perspective, This is the reason why when you're dealing with jurisprudence, they will always say things like that the people keep consenting to be their slave. Mm-hmm. And then the people won't take responsibility that they're consenting. And therefore, they're in contempt. They're due to the contempt that the personating judges or personating gods have a right to meet sovereign punishments upon them and to steal their estates. And so this is where you get the contempt that is expressed by a lot of people in government against the people. They're actually contemptuous of the people because the people keep defending their ignorance. And then the people keep on supporting or voting for the demons, democracy, demons, and then complaining about the results. You know, it's really interesting. It's really interesting. Immoral, yes. Unethical, yes. But the deal is what we're also seeking is the people to start taking responsibility. Not because we're suggesting, because really they're going to have to discover either willingly or not that they will be taking responsibility one way or another. You either take responsibility or become sacrificed. Rough, but kind of fair.
Let me see what we got here. Let me see. I did see a question up here. Let me see if I can go back there. Here's DJ Red says, I really just want to know if we are the Aboriginal people or original people.
Aboriginal, ab means first.
First and from.
And you can say original, yes. It still means you're really both, because Aboriginal means the first.
Okay. All right. Here's another. Did I miss the cell memory and how to activate the knowledge meditation? I don't think we did that. Let me see. Yeah, we'll be putting out the information for the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, we're going to have to, because the deal of it is, you know, the dark priesthood is attacking truth like a wild wolf right now. You know, as the world is reawakening, they are upping their game. Biological warfare, viral warfare, political warfare, psychological warfare, military warfare, economic warfare, sociological engineering warfare, which they've been doing all the time. It's just that they're not wasting time setting up smokescreen programs like they used to. They're just being blunt. And so this is, you know, some people are uncomfortable with it, but it's not new. It's just that the priesthood's masks are off. Remember we were saying the last few years, all masks are off. And because the people could see it if they were willing, you know. It's just that it's going to become more and more undeniable by them and also by you. So what you going to do? Because that's basically where we're at right now.
Yeah, let me see. Okay. Ready to test it. Word Sheila, Dr. G, I ask if crystals are good to have. They're very healing to me. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's just that you have to make sure you have the right crystal for you.
So now you're going back to the culture,
right.
to know.
You also need to know that you don't have crystals that counteract and conflict with each other. So crystals are good, which kind of, you know, one of the things I have in mind for my little auction is a book about crystals. I mean, it's cards on crystals, but yes, crystals generally are good. You just need to make sure. And I don't know why I don't list and show people all the crystals that I have down here. All of those are crystals, and I need to make pictures.
You know, a lot of stuff you had for years, and you just
those I have.
No, but none of the ones you talked about that you had. You told me about the ones you had under your bed for years.
Well, yeah, I didn't know what they were. Yeah. I had a big old conflict going on right there. I do sleep better now that the box of I had like. I don't know, 50 different crystals in a box that I had stuck under the bed.
Yeah, but you want to kind of separate them.
Yeah, so because all crystals are not created equal for whatever purposes you need. So make sure everybody has some sage though. Because
now
look, you said everybody should have sage or Palo Santo.
Yeah.
Clearance. Anyway.
Well, again, isn't it back to the culture that already was?
Yeah.
But the deal of is having a comprehension of why your forefathers did certain things.
Yes.
Because they're harmonic with nature.
Absolutely.
And then you start recognizing that they were given negative connotations by the hybrids for you to abandon them. Then they gave you idol gods in place of it that's been destroying you. There you go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What we did worked. What we had was what we needed. And we need to get back there. That's the thing that's going to defeat the actions and the all of the operations that have been put in place against us.
Yeah, the exploiters.
That's how you can say
the vampires.
Remember the biblical thing: no weapon formed against you shall prosper. I mean, you got to have the right tools in order to defend yourself.
And it's always been around you. It's not like what do we do? I mean, how we continuously use our Bibles and our Qurans and Owaspis and Torahs, etc., to express the culture and then don't study the culture from what all these books come from. It's almost like they speak of it and then, it's sort of like you look the image and don't live the image. And because everybody's doing that, thinking that we're doing our deed type thing. Just like like Dr. Naila, like you talk about, like people keep talking about church. And if you ask the average person who's been going to churches most of their life what church is, they'll start telling you it's the building.
Yeah,
and don't know that it's an abstract of the great astrological or circle.
Well, the very thing that church denounces,
is what church is. Is what church is.
That is funny.
And this is why, and I think more now people can comprehend when we be saying or making a statement. Many people have gone to those buildings, but very few people have ever been to church. And yet the priests have known that, and it was the priests who have been doing that to them.
Now, I had a conversation with another sort of kind of former pastor who had listened to you talk about all pastors, all priests, all whatever know this. And he and I, this was just like yesterday, maybe, or the day before yesterday. It was in the last 2 days. And he was a little offended because he said he didn't know. And I said, don't be offended.
There's no need to be offended.
Well, I didn't know, because when we say we didn't know, there are, I told him you have to be pretty high up though. When you get into these mega things, mega congregations and so forth, there's no way you get there unless you definitely know. And then the others of us stumble like I did on the truth, or awakened by the truth,
and then turn a blind eye because they're vested, like you want to say.
Either you turn a blind eye or you do what I did do and you step out on the truth. I turned my back on fraud. What you knew was
what you learned was fraud.
I had to. But others won't do it. They'll know it. Those are the ones when you say when they find out.
Now, and I say this, and I say this. I say this. This is what I say. You know how like when we're discussing some things that we're doing around, physically, on a carpentry level, and a construction level, and a basic structural physics engineering level, and like for instance, when you're sitting here. And I was building them shelves, and the shelves being squared and level and plumb in their structure exposed actually the warpage in the walls that otherwise you didn't notice.
No.
But it's not something that we weren't, from an engineering perspective, actually dealing with from the time that we started doing work on this house, correcting, But when you start seeing the squares and the angles, just like you can look up there, right? And a person who doesn't understand structure looks at it one way, but someone who understands structure already understand that he definitely doesn't have kiln dried lumber in there, and that they got rid of a lot of their trash, if you get the whole point. Or you could tell that they were flipping. They weren't trying to really make something proper. And the reason I'm saying that is to say this. You know how like like being a barber, right? And my father was a barber. Over the years, when you're dealing with hair, you're dealing with bone structure. You actually deal with a study from a doctor's point of view, right? When you're studying cosmetology, And you know, the test that you would take would be in a doctorate level for germicides, you know, fungus, hair texture, you know, looking at how hair grows from the crown, etc., different textures. And as you deal with these things over the years, by virtue of what you do, you learn also, not just from the established literary structured literary learning of both biological and structure, hair structure and follicles, etc. You learn from experience. And the reason I've always said that, you know how like so someone's working with carpentry for years and you work in different types of buildings, you begin to learn certain structures, even though technically when you're dealing with blueprint reading and carpentry principles and angles and cuts and complex angles, etc., and wood densities based on hardwoods to softwoods, common woods, less common woods, rare woods, how they're used, what situations you would use them in, certain situations you would not use them in, thicknesses, widths of wood used in different structures for different purposes, whether in joists, as an example, or in rafters, etc. So by default, you learn certain things. So I've always said this, and what I recognize over the years, like say, if someone is over the years studying the Bible, as an example, and they've literally made a business out of it, you know, and they've been collecting finance from people over the years, and they get degrees. And if you're studying, we're not talking about people who are playing these emotional games, pretending to be so-called erudite. But if you're studying, there's no way you can study the Bible and not learn Septuagintus. They're your first Bibles. You see what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. And this is why you see me will say when people, if someone's just talking casually on the corner or something like that, right? You can kind of give them a little leeway. But when someone puts up a sign and takes on a title of imam, pastor, rabbi, you know, bishop, reverend, those titles are PhDs. All those titles are adepts. And so if you say you're a carpenter and someone charges you with violating the use of a saw, then you say, well, some of us don't know what a saw is. If you said you're a carpenter, you can be held to having the responsibility to know what a saw and a hammer is. And so I say, anyone who studies religion and gets into it and makes it a business, and you've been in it for years, these things come across your path by default. Now, what you find is that when people start discovering these things, what they do is they start looking at the sociological positions that they're in, the vestments that they're in, the finance and the schoolings that they paid for, the buildings that they mortgaged, and etc. And they make decisions that if they tell the truth, the stuff collapses. And that's what I'm saying when I say that they know, because it's like you can't not know. You know, it's like you can't become a diver and a swimmer and never heard of H2O. Never know what current is. Don't know what tides are, as an example, if you get the point. Mm-hmm. Some of them don't know that water's wet. Well, I ain't playing that game no more. And I think because over the years we've been always making excuses for people is another reason why we're where we are right now. A robber don't know he robbing you, but he always happens to rob you, but he never gives it back. Well, he didn't know he was robbing me. Well, stop. You know, this is where I am with that. That's why I say that. Okay. Because by default, you learn, if you get the point. If you're involved in it, by default, you learn. And we need, if somebody say they're a surgeon and they've been cutting people's heads, hold them to their claim. They put a sign out there and they took a penny. If they took a penny, they're responsible. And it's called the rule of color. And the rule of color in law has always been this, No one who rules in government, no one who takes a position of authority or takes a position of trust can ever say they do not know the law, for it is their responsibility by organized principle to take an oath on the very principles of law that they are held in trust to do. Therefore, ignorance of the law is never excused, and particularly for anyone who takes a position of rulership. Therefore, the priesthood is not forgiven. They can forgive themselves, but the divine does not forgive.
Here's a question, kind of heavy, and I've gotten a lot of calls on this type of subject.
Oh, I can understand it.
Scroogy Doyle wants to know, what do you do if your spouse is ignorant, willingly so, but there's a child involved? Should one leave to pursue this calling to truth?
Keep this in mind. The willingness to leave should be converted into the willingness to teach. That's my answer.
Makes sense. You know, I tell people, because I get a lot of calls where they'll say, you know, my significant other, my maid or something, they totally aren't for it. Had a conversation today with someone who says they would never, they're probably on here, never marry because they can't find any.
Well, I can understand that too.
Find someone who would understand, and this is, so important to them. But I always say, if you're in a relationship and your significant other and the family members and whatever aren't for it, that doesn't mean that you stop your pursuit of knowledge. If you came in here by yourself, you don't necessarily have to leave, but you need to be able to pursue your study, because there is somebody out there who's going to want to listen to you. It may not be in your household, but
isn't this interesting how what we're really discussing right now in this instance is the result of truth not being exposed. And it's a result of the contamination of humanity done by the priesthood by design. How we handle it is going to be determined by each of us in our own circumstance. You also may have to look at, and I don't promote it, but I comprehend what's going on. You know how, like the Septuagint say, if your right arm offend you, cut it off. But if you choose to do so, make sure that you do everything with moral, fair, and balanced determination, that there be no karmic response, in the sense that it is not predicated on any selfish or unfair motive. However, the other problem, because these are real problems that people are dealing with, because these what you call destructive platforms, even in social relationships, were by design. And again, if we're not willing to start telling the truth, this stuff is going to fall apart anyway. So my position is, look, you're in a battle that you're going to lose if you don't fix it. So if you're going to get robbed, put up a fight. That's my point. Because you're dealing with spiritual and physical robbery right now. And it's becoming open, meaning they're not even playing put the glove on anymore. They just walk you up, punch you right in the eye, and take your stuff, and then claim to be your government.
Now, I'm not sure.
And don't care whether you recognize it or not. Meanwhile, they're willing to kill you off and your children as you become less useful to them, which is really what they're doing. So now what you going to do?
I don't know whether I missed this question or if this is the question, because a person, this Knee Relief Chronicle is saying, Dr. G, please answer question. Didn't say ask. Answer question about wooden energy totem and violent trauma spots of hybrids killing Moors like early 1900s Niagara Falls massacre.
Yeah.
I don't know whether.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether there was a question asked
because
earlier.
it's a structure. It's kind of, you know, the way it's structured. You don't know whether it's a question.
I don't know
or
whether they're saying I asked the question up here and you missed it.
Well, I didn't
see it, so you'd have to put it back.
From implications, from what I'm reading from implications, this is for people who may not get it. Many of the matriarchs, and we in general, in the land of Nod, and in the upper reaches of the atomic lakes, would meditate. Would use those areas for meditation. And so the Niagara Falls area, coming off the lakes, etc., was where for thousands of years we had our meetings, confederations, and meditations, etc., on multiple levels. It's just simply a social part of our structure here. Which is also why the hybrids focused on murdering or sacrificing a lot of the Moabitises there, killing off the matriarchy. And a lot of the hybrids would mock it by saying they would call Niagara Falls Nigger Falls, etc., you know, where they chop their heads off, steal their gold, their silver, stuff like that, and throw them over the falls. And as you know, with the rebellion that took place in that area, this is where the hybrids also corrupted the history of the massacre in that area. And that's where they started with some persons claiming to be Jews, but not Jews, who took over and converted the Niagara movement into what is known as the NAACP, and coloring our people and putting them under a color of law. And this is why you see persons who are part of that platform of thinking refer to our people as persons of color, part of the priesthood spell cast. So let's go into the law and see what they mean by people of color or colored people, colored persons. And this is back to maintenance of hell on earth. And this is where, you know, they keep doing this conversion or telling or saying things to mean something that they do not mean. And then our people take it and actually are casting spells on themselves and don't know that they're casting spells on themselves. And this is, again, why we do what we do. Color. And then we're going to go into colored. So when you're talking about the social engineering of the Exchequers and the Roman Curia members who took over the movement of Niagara, and this includes the nature of, so that people could understand the operations of the Exchequer's operations, what they did when they did the bombing in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to steal the wealthy bank of the Moors, the last vestige of the wealthy banks when they bombed Tulsa, Oklahoma. So let's deal with colored. Now, color, when they call our people people of color, color is a semblance, a simulacrum, or a simulacrum as distinguished from that which is real. I repeat, color means an appearance, a semblance or simulacrum as distinguished from that which is real, a prima facie or an apparent right, hence a deceptive appearance, a plausible, assumed exterior, concealing a lack of reality. Colored. By common usage in America, so they're giving you geographical, political, jurisdictional operations. By common usage in America, this term, colored, in such phrases as quote unquote, colored persons, quote unquote, the colored race, quote unquote, colored men, and the like, is used to designate Negroes or persons of the African race, including all persons of mixed blood descendant from Negro ancestry, etc. But where the state constitution provided for separate schools for the white and colored races, notice that these are terms, social terms, the term white race was held to be limited to the Caucasian race, and the term, quote unquote, colored races, quote unquote, was held to embrace all other races. And then they will give you law case references in relationship to arguments brought before the court. And it has been held that there is no legal, technical signification to the phrase, quote unquote, colored persons, which the court are bound judicially to know. So that means from a position of law, the court don't even acknowledge it because it's a social engineering term and it's a fraud and it's a fake. And it deals with artificial persons, maskings, prima facie, semblances distinguished from that which is real and is used to cover up or to color an issue or being. There you go. And so when they took over the Niagara movement, they covered it up with a whole new reconstructed sociological paradigm called colored persons. Now, doesn't that also fit the paradigm of them operating with the straw, man of straw, 14th Amendment concept of the monkey, Negro, troglodyte nigger, sociology, and claiming it to be a part of the human race when in fact it deals with the Pangidae, hybrid Anthropopithecus, and we accept it as African identity, which had absolutely nothing to do with, but had to do with social engineering. So you can look at their administration and maintenance of hell on earth, because you have a whole multiple layers of generations of people that think that when someone says persons of color, that they're doing you some kind of metaphysical favor of Afrocentric spirituality when they just called you a fake artificial person outside of the human family. And it's been controlled since 1909 under what is called the NAACP, and has been promoted for generations as a liberation front, when actually it's a front of covering up the history and the loss of a state of the Aboriginal people, particularly in that territory.
And Missy B. Wiggins says her family thinks she's going to hell because she doesn't go to church anymore.
Well, we just told you what hell is.
Yeah.
And we're all in hell, and they are too.
Let me just see if there are any.
And tell her go to Law Dictionary and learn what hell really is. We just told you what it is. So go back and review, and then do your research and share that with your family. You know, because they need to know. And also, with with people having difficulty with their family members who think they have been to church, give them this. You do the research and share with them and give them this question. Ask them to not give you an emotional or judgmental response, but to tell the truth and give you, written by their own hands, an explanation of the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed that they have been promoting in the name of the church.
Here's a question. Certain hybrid Europeans, possibly justifiably labeled as sovereign citizens within their respective venues discussing, quote unquote, all things law, frequently self-proclaim and essentially confer nationality upon themselves, renouncing their current citizenship status and self-proclaim to be Americans. When privileged to be party and observer of these discussions, is it necessary to attempt to correct them and rebut their claims as being such, and also provide them an alternative remedy?
Well, the remedy was already in place. Wasn't the remedy in place with the treaties that they breached before being brought into the constitutional fold of government? Isn't part of the problems, and aren't many of the problems that they're experiencing now because they breached the Constitution, which includes the treaties that supersede the Constitution, as expressed in Article 3 and Article 6, and that, in fact, they know that they are hybrid. Now, that's not a negative for them, but aren't they descendants of colonists at America? And didn't they stop telling the people the truth? And now it is the lies and the misrepresentation that have been presented for the reconstruction operations against Aboriginal people, and particularly expressed in the philosophy page of John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates operations and Skull and Bones operations expressed via the General Education Board of 1902. And those of you who are sharing here with us tonight at House of Reawakening Minds, when you get a chance, you can go in the public record and look at the philosophy page of the General Education Board, and you can see how they used docility operations as a weapon against us. Now the problem that they have is the lies that they have told is now destroying them. So you see a lot of the hybrid Europeans are trying to tell a lot of the truths to save their estates. But are the estates that they're trying to save theirs, or is that stolen estates under colonial operations? So again, let's go to Webster's dictionary, right? And it's for those who don't know, let's see who the Americans are. And I comprehend why you're saying what you're saying, but the conditions of what's taking place on the planet right now, it kind of sort of like a oxymoron in the social engineering paradigm. They lied and told the people that America's a country, America's a continent. Is that correct? So it's opposite, right? But they do and formulated a private human trafficking corporation in Austria called American Trading Company, right? Now, so they've been promoting since 1861 that their corporation is the country that the operatives of their corporation colonized and have been systematically through the Roman Curia members of the Circle Church and Chancery of the Bar Association, British Accredited Registry, have been overthrowing the Republic, of which they have been profitable members. And you have a whole so-called bevy of so-called barratry law firms across the land that's been privateering and raping the people economically to this very day. Is that not true? It certainly is. Then you have a bunch of POW camps that are run by them. They've been packing the prisons with our people. to the tune of 80 to 90%. Isn't that true also? So now that many of them are being sacrificed by the dark priesthood who are being dismantled, etc., so they want to make this sovereign citizen argument. Well, they're not citizens of a country, they're citizens of the corporation. Because the people of the land would be known as nationals. Internationally, when you're dealing with categories of citizens, and you all can look this up, it will be categorized from AA, which would be the nationals. Then you have A1 to A19, which would be citizens and persons of alien status on different purposes of operating or doing business territorially or in jurisdictional operations of any particular nation state. So which are they? Because they certainly ain't Americans if they are hybrid Europeans. So American, a native of America originally. If it's originally, it still is. Originally applied to the aboriginal or copper colored races. So they used to do the paper bag test, the brown paper bag test, and they used to do the copper penny test to exclude the true Americans from the benefits of organized government since they were colonizing us. So now they're claiming to be the copper complexion, swarthy people. Who are the Americans? Are they the Aboriginal? If they're not the Aboriginal, can they be Americans? Let logic answer that question. So you need not argue with anyone to argue about who Americans are. You just need to get our people to stop claiming to be somebody that they're not and to claim their birthright and start help fixing this thing. Now, for them, and sovereign citizen is an oxymoron. Because the citizen is a person of the corporate construct. Now they can be a civilian. Now then you got to name who that civilian is, because at any given time you may have, according to A1 to A19, different peoples of different nation states territorially operating anywhere on the planet, as it always has been. And then so you'll be arguing what their nationality is. Now, do you hear anyone in Africa on that side of Africa talking about the African sovereign or African nation? African's a continent. And then you have multiple jurisdictions of tribes and nation states at that particular jurisdictional territory. Same thing goes with Europe. Same thing goes with Asia. So in a way, it gives presents the dynamics and the paradigms for multiple levels of studying to dissect the artificiality of the social engineering that's operative right now. And so when you see them talking about American or sovereign citizen, if you imply citizen would imply nation state. So now in national and international law, you must name the nation. And the United States is not a nation. The United States is a corporation that's also bankrupt. So this is why when you look at legislation under the board of directors for the United States Corporation, that U.S. citizens can't contest their operations. Why? Because they are citizens and beneficiaries of the constructed fraud. So you can't be that and contest it. That's the fact. That's why they're trying to claim to be Americans. But if they're Americans, now are they Moors? If they ain't Moors, they can't claim to be Americans. They're in a conundrum right now, aren't they? And so is our people. This is part of what we together must start working out in our social relationships with each other to start cleaning up Midgard, because this is part of the problems of them managing hell at Midgard. So this social corruption, and social solace systems, and the institutions that have been put in place, and the misclassifications of citizenships, and the alterations of the Nationalization Act by Grant, 1790, etc., when they altered that, also with the Horace Greeley operations at Philadelphia with the convention of the Whigamores and the Cotton Whigs and the Conscience Whigs deciding to call the hybrid descendants of hybrid Europeans, white people, which is a legal status that did not belong to them. Now, all of those chickens, like Brother Malcolm said, are coming home to roost because they've been going to and fro the earth, devouring nations, and now they've lost their sovereignty. However, to claim sovereignty, you must be what? You must be in divine order, in harmony with nature's law and nature's God, as expressed in the Declaration of Independence, as expressed in its being adopted from the Aboriginal people, with divine hermetic principles of law and governance, etc., that they have pretty much rejected in their processes of robbing us, the Aboriginal people, who they branded Negroes, blacks, and coloreds, and Latinos. And now they want to be sovereign. They can't be sovereign unless they're home. So when you're talking anywhere at Midgard in a jurisdictional issue relative to impropria persona principle, can't be impropria persona and then claim to be something that you're not. The same way that our people cannot be impropria persona, claim to be somebody that they're not. So you don't have to tell them what you need to do, and what we all need to do is start fixing our family members who are still in that gray area of fear of being themselves, because these same Romans keep doing stuff to them. And this is part of the social fabric that's actually falling apart here at North America. So actually look at it as an issue on the table of social studies. Because in studying it, we can correct a lot of things among our people, because it gives you insight to what they're dealing with now. Just like a lot of law cases, whereas they're being sued, they're instituting Federal Rule 12b-6, diversity of nationality, when it's convenient for them, but you don't see them teaching that to our people, do you? So take that in consideration. I yield the floor.
Sherry Lynn says, I thought the U.S. was dissolved on January 20th, 2021 at 12 noon.
U.S. was dissolved 1861. You know, I'm just showing you how their corruption continues, and they keep kicking what they call kicking the can down the road. They keep on violating the treaties and violating Constitution, and then keep on operating under color while calling everyone else colored. You know, just like we talk about, you know, so many people make, not that it's not valid, they'll make, you know, the economic corruption here. They'll keep talking about Jekyll Island and then not talk about the coup d'etat in 1861. You see the point? The Organic Act of Congress. And then they'll keep talking about Washington, D.C. being the Capitolium when they know that the Capitolium was Shekamoxen.
Another question, though.
Go ahead.
Sherry Lynn says, where is home for them?
Home for them is accepted by virtue of naturalization, which is why Naturalization Act was set up in the first place.
So where's the physical location? I mean, like they're from?
Physical location, they were given or ceded territory by the Druids in Ingla land.
Who were the Druids?
The Druids was Naga Moors.
But we never see that when you see the
No, you don't.
depiction.
No, you don't.
No.
And so
Stonehenge and all that.
That's exactly correct. And you will have energy centers all around the planet that's like Stonehenge. That's not the only place. They don't tell you because they want you to think that these operations on this planet, Midgard, is younger or earlier to justify the idol god system structures that they created for the priesthood to control and subjugate humanity when we've been here for millions of years. And that's the fact. And logically, when the real history comes out, as it comes out, all of the God games that they've been playing over humanity will logically, by virtue of reality, collapse. And then the people will understand why the metaphor, the anthropomorphic Jesus reminded the people that you are all gods. And we got that to look into, don't we?
Yes. Yes.
Anyway, I want to thank you all for, coming here, sharing this night with us at the House of Reawakening Minds. And we are doing what we can intelligently and with comprehension of the wars being waged against us to try to share with you, to uplift the people as best that we're able, and encouraging you to do the same, and encouraging you to love one another and do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And the House of Reawakening Minds is here to support you. And so we ask you to support the House of Reawakening Minds to keep this platform viable and functional in spite of all the resistance and what you say, war attacks, direct and indirect, etc. So support the House of Reawakening Minds, and we thank you for sharing this night with us.
Thank you so much. As Grand Sheik says, so our Cash App is always open, as is our PayPal. We do appreciate you. I do have and I think it's what I call an auction coming up. Can you grab?
Oh,
can you grab those over there?
Yeah. Oh, you want to share?
That
yes.
And the one. Oops, what's the picture? And the one of the 1,500 ways to escape. No, I'm not going out over there. Just grab that. Yeah. So no, that's all right. Just hold them up. So,
I'll get that.
Grand Sheik has in his when he moves those other books, he has some books here. These are all brand new books. 1,500 Ways to Escape the Human Race. This is what I'm currently reading. I bought those. But this is the proven formula. It's called Meant for More. The proven formula to turn your knowledge into profits. The things we need to be doing right now. That book, the next book, these are brand new books. This is called The Soul's Brain, and it's the neurology and logic of what is that? Your fingers at the bottom of your intuition, which you definitely need to have it working. People are asking about scalar technology and different. So this is called Energy Strands: The Ultimate Guide to Clearing the Cords that are constricting your life. This one is called There Are No Goodbyes, and this is for anyone dealing with the transition of loved ones or friends or something. This book will help you in that process. This one is called Soulpreneurs, like entrepreneurs. It's live your purpose and let your platform and lift your platform and leap into prosperity. This one is called The Magic Path of Intuition. This is by Florence Scovel Shinn, she's a woman that transitioned years ago, but very, very wise. This awesome book. And lastly, these are cards. This is called Daily Crystals, Crystal Inspirations, a 52 card deck. And it's a copy of my book, Poetry is the Musings of Undercover Writer. There you have, but with all of those books, they are a value of 150 notes, the books and the cards. They're all brand new. We are doing I'm not sure how to do it, but if someone wants to get those books, if you would text me or email me, anyone who gives at least 150 notes, because it would help out the House of Reawakening Minds, you can get all of those books, and they're brand new. So you can email us, or you can call 302-345-0500 if you are interested in all of those brand new books, and they will be sent out to you. So thank you so much for your support. You'll be reading what I'm reading, and you'll be getting what I'm getting. So we appreciate you, each and every last one of you who comes on week after week to listen to what we're doing. And also, I want to say thank you also to those of you who did attend my 66 solar return, which was on Wednesday.
We had fun, didn't we?
We had fun. I turned 66. A lot. I thought a lot more folks would show up, but we still had a good time.
Yes.
So I am absolutely still celebrating for the whole month.
Yeah.
So my Cash App,
which we should do.
Look, my Cash App still works, y'all, but at least support the house. You know, and if you're interested in those books, and you can give at least 150 notes. The first person that gets to me, I don't want anybody to send 150. I just want you to get in touch with me first, because I don't want people sending it and then the books are already gone. So 150 or more, you get to get the books, and hopefully I will be able to send them out like tomorrow. All right. Thank you so much.
Have a grand evening.
Thank you so much. We do appreciate you.